Any advice on how to find a job in the design industry?
I think what I said earlier about like staying in touch with things going on around you in life, I think some good advice I think to find a job in the business I think is to understand what's going on in the communities where you're going to school and also in the communities that you aspire to go to work in. So you find out what the companies there are doing, you find out new business that they're attracting, if they've won some new business, but you get to know the agencies and you get to know their philosophies if you can by studying. And the only way to do that is to really stay up on the news. So what I said earlier about staying in touch with life and all the things that are going on, I think it's important that you stay in touch with the publications about the business so that you can find out who's doing what and what kind of energy is coming from those shops, because then you find a place that you may focus on wanting to work at and you stay in touch with what's going on. Then be creative. If you want to get your foot in the door, be creative. A resume, an email, I think are disasters. I think you've got to figure out how to get into those, how to get attention in these companies, and the way to do it is to be as creative as you want to try to demonstrate you're creative. Be as creative as you can and show them that. If an account, say if there's an account and you want to go to work somewhere like in Atlanta and they work on Coca-Cola, well, maybe if that's something that you're really aspiring to want to do, be creative with Coca-Cola and something to do with a way to get their attention. Now you think, well, they work on Coke, so is that going to get their attention? Well, it's going to show that you understand their product that they're working on and that you have a creative thought that has some connection with Coca-Cola, and 9 times out of 10 people will notice that and they will respond as compared to somebody that sends an email or a resume. I get probably 10 emails or resumes at least a week. And I have a lot of people here that filter that stuff. And that typically doesn't go anywhere. An interesting letter sometimes will, or an interesting package will. Now a lot of people say, well, I'm mailing you this and I'm going to email you my portfolio. Well, I don't have time. I get 100 emails a day. So I don't have time to go in somebody's portfolio and start looking at it unless they've piqued my interest somehow. If they've done something that gets my attention, then I may go and look at their portfolio. Like every once in a while I've gotten things here. I've got some things in that drawer right there that were things that I liked that people sent me. I interviewed this guy because he sent me a box years and years ago. Chris Robb and myself, when we were trying to hire an art director, from one art director we got this really cheesy little box. And on the outside it said, 90% of Vinny Matas's ideas are crap. Which it made us smile. First of all, it was kind of, a cheesy little thing the way he did it. We opened the box up and inside he had taken these little 5 and 10 little gems, 5 and dime store gems, and glued them inside and said the other 10% are gems. And it said, I want to be your next art director. And we were like, okay, this is pretty funny. At least he did something interesting to get our attention. So we called him and we eventually hired him. And in the interview, we said to him, do you play softball? And he said, why? And we said, we have a softball team and we need an outfielder. And so a couple days later, we got a softball, which was it wasn't so much that it was the softball that we got that was the coolest thing, but he actually wrote everything on the softball thanking us for the interview and mailed the softball just as it was. And he said he found out by going to the post office and asking a lot of questions whether you could actually just mail a ball. And the ball came in the mail just like that and said, hey, thanks for the tryout. And we were like, immediately we got that. We went, hire this guy. He's great. So, and he was great. And by the way, he is very, very good and very established to this day. He did a great job.
Yeah, I would say that the biggest mistake maybe people make when they're trying to get into a job. People refer to the me generation, but everybody was in a me generation, I think, when they were starting out. It's not about you when you're going to look for a job. It's not about how a company can further your career. It's about what you can do for another company, or what you can do, for an employer. That's how they're looking at it. So you have to acknowledge that and accept it up front and say, okay, now research the companies where you think that your skill sets can enhance their product, not, what's the most comfortable environment for me to work in. Really look at who you are, what you bring to the table, and say, yeah, these are the companies that can benefit from my skills, and sell yourself that way. And do the research on those companies and say, before you go talk to them, find out how they approach their work. If they've got a website, that explains their thought process or their approach to creative or something. Really understand it before you talk to them, and customize a portfolio that's really targeted to the kind of skill sets that company's looking for. And sell yourself that way. But you really have to kind of do it, I think, on a case-by-case basis. It's hard to come up with it's tougher for a new student because you only have so much to show. And that's a bit of a challenge. But you can't really approach it, even about the way you talk about the work that you've done. You have to kind of customize that to who you're talking to and really understand them first. Because it really is all about them. It's not about you when you go to interview.
Informational interviews, and like to find a professional that you admire and just to ask them for a few minutes of their time, not to show your portfolio, not to try and get a job, but to pick their brain and to find out what they know about the industry. Just like this interview, a student can go interview anybody they want, and most professionals would be happy to give them that time and to help them and to teach them, and maybe even to connect them to somebody else who can get them a job or get them an interview. And that's really how it all works. But professionals have great advice and are more than willing to give it if you ask.
It's a hard one. I mean, that's like the question of how do I get clients for a freelance business, It's the same thing, it's a hard question, man. I mean, and you gotta find your niche and, what works for you. And, that's something that worked for her. So I would, like how they get my first job, instead of looking at Orlando Sentinel, look at the OAF website, and look for some jobs in there and send your resume, and your portfolio. And if it's a good portfolio, they're looking for somebody, chances are they're gonna call you in, And, just let it know, man, you wanna learn, you don't be cocky, you just wanna learn, And there's gonna be somebody who's gonna give you the opportunity, man. If you're good and you're willing to learn, I guarantee you somebody's gonna give you an opportunity somewhere. And don't get disappointed, don't get frustrated about, going to 20 interviews, man. That's what it takes, Unless, you are,
unless you're Jen Color Brand.
Yeah, unless you're blue.
Industry.
It's a tougher field than a lot of places, I think, to get into, because really your portfolio is what sells you. But again, networking, just kind of getting yourself out there. There's the Orlando Ad Fed has a job site, and I know a lot of places in town will post things there. And Aquent, we use Aquent a lot for our freelance work as opposed to using just outside people. We have a few freelancers that we use that way, but in short notice and having a large volume of people to pick from, Aquent might be a good way to get your foot in the door, which is really half the battle.